Nice long rest.
I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Executive Committee of the Dunn County Board of Supervisors, Wednesday, January 11th, 2023 at 3:30 PM in room 54 of Dunn County Government Center. First order of business is called to order. Administrator Corpola, will you handle that for us? Which I think we got everybody here now, so. We have everyone here. Call to the roll.
Yes, everyone is, all of the members are accounted for.
Yeah, but I think we're call of the roll.
Do you want me to call? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see. We have Supervisor Steen,
Here.
Supervisor Kinnear,
Here.
Supervisor Rogers,
Here.
Supervisor Morehouse,
Here.
Supervisor Johnson,
Here.
Supervisor Calabrese,
Here.
Supervisor Headland,
Here.
Supervisor McCullough,
Here.
Supervisor Quinn,
Here.
Supervisor Zons.
Thank you. Next order of business is the approval of the minutes, December 14th, 2022 meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve. Supervisor Zahn moves. Is there a second?
I will second it with a correction.
Supervisor Kinnear seconds with a correction.
Calabrese. I thought I'd do it for him this time. Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second with the corrected minutes. Any other discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Next order of business is public comments, and I think we have some public here to comment. When we call on you, please give us your name and your address and go from there. And if you're able, we'd like for you to talk from the podium up there, I think.
Yep. My name is Kelly Kraus. My address is E5287 750th Avenue, Menominee, Wisconsin. I am wanting to just address a couple of things. I attended the PRD meeting yesterday, and the topic that I want to just take a minute to give some comment on is the proposed executive order that's going to be talked about here for review and moving forward to the Dunn County Supervised meeting next week for the Tainter Lake District establishment. So the discussions took place yesterday, and one of the things that I know that people had talked about afterwards, or we talked about a thought process, is there is no public input hearing allowed tomorrow for that next on the 18th coming up. So I thought about that a little bit, and I just want to give what I think is my opinion. It's too late in the game to advertise for having public input or suggesting that as an option to the supervisors next week. I hate to see the water muddied on this in moving forward. It's an afterthought. I wish it would have been thought of before, but it would have to have its 10-day public notice so that people would know. People could talk amongst themselves if they wanted to address this. This is a very serious topic because it's a huge amount of ongoing taxation that's going to take place. Minimum of 2.5 levy, potentially. On top of that, it is special meetings with taxations, funding, all with just the properties that are on the lake, not Dunn County, not on a global basis. So it's serious stuff. So it doesn't have enough time to say, hey, supervisors, we'd like to maybe think about this. I know this might be a talked about topic today, but I would rather refrain from that and leave the process as it is next week. with it just being presented with an executive order. I don't think that enough people would know. I don't think it's fair. I don't think that the rights there are correct, that we haven't had time to notice for people to be out there to give input. I wish it would have been thought of before, considered before, but it hasn't. That's it.
Thank you. Any other people to make public comment? Oh.
He was just stretching.
Oh, okay. Hearing none, then we'll move on to the county manager's report, item 5.
All right. So the first item on the agenda is to a review of the draft notice for the county board meeting next week. There is one addition based on the legislative committee, which occurred right before this. And there will be an additional item under 10B, and it'll be 10B3, which will be a resolution amending the 2023 legislative agenda related to the highway department or highway committee issues. Otherwise, we will have a presentation by the Dunn County Housing Authority. There are a couple of zoning ordinance changes, and we will have a presentation early on in public comment, a short presentation by Scott Rogers, speaking to the Chippewa St. Croix Rail Commission. I think that's all. Any questions about that? Additions, changes? One thing I will add to it that I made note to myself was I will add a reminder that the legislative agenda presentation is scheduled for February 6th, since that will occur before the next county board meeting. I will send these, the comments I'm about to make, I'll send out to you that are appearing remotely in just a moment, but I can't multitask enough to do that. So you're gonna have to just bear with me. I did provide, I thought it was worthwhile to memorialize at the beginning of 2023, some of the things that many of you have heard me speak to in this or other meetings. And the 3 focuses of attention, primary focus is attention. There's a lot of things that happen on a day-to-day basis across the county, but in terms of those things that I revert back to when I think about how will I know at the end of the year whether I have moved the needle in any direction. These are the 3 things that I'm looking at, just some of the tasks that are happening with regard to that. So I just called it sort of the focus for 2023, economic development. Working with the Dunn County EDC to host a planning summit of regional partners. That's something we're scheduling for probably March. Collaborating closely with West Central Regional Planning and DHS to determine next steps for implementation and recommendations from the Dunn County Housing Study, since I believe it's important for that to not just be set on a shelf. And then partnering with the Dunn County Economic Development committee or corporation to complete a 2023 goal or kind of prioritization project, actually, which is happening next week, next week. So those are things related to economic development, looking at employee recruitment, retention, and well-being. We have been working with the process of representation from the staff across the county, about 22 of them, I believe, we've called it the Employee Relations Work Group. It probably needs a snazzier title, but that is what it is at the moment. Largely comprised of staff. There are a few management people involved. Dan Dunbar has been leading us through a prioritization project with that group with regard to what are the things that are most important to the staff. And we are a few meetings into that, meeting roughly monthly. We're supposed to meet this morning, but the weather was a little impediment to that because we are trying to meet in person just to facilitate good conversation. Then we are also taking advantage of any opportunity to highlight positive staff contribution. You've seen some of the emails. I know emails can get tedious, delete them if you don't want to read them, but is a way to call out to the things that are happening. Noted at the Highway Committee meeting this morning, Krista Vind and Dan Dunbar, or sorry, Dustin Binder have worked to do a lot of social media work around communication around kind of highway operations in inclement weather. And it's been, I think, super well received. And a lot of positive comments about we didn't know that this is why these things happen, and we're thankful for the information. So really just trying to call out the good work that's already happening in the county. Working with Beata to forecast budget and benefit costs over 5 years and propose funding strategy before we get to the county budget process a little bit later in the spring. Really continuing to strive to make Dunn County an employer of choice. It's actually a phrase that's out there and a place where people kind of desire to work, not desire, but like, why don't you go to work for Dunn County? Because they're a great place to work. So really looking at what we can do to create an attractive culture for that. Looking at developing a management training plan for all senior level leadership and looking at not only performance evaluation, but performance management, which is really that act of helping people to providing kind of continuous feedback and tweaking along the way versus a year annual performance evaluation. And then lastly, in the area of communication, soliciting content and coordinating with Doug Mell and Krista Vind and Dan Dunbar on regular communication regarding county priorities. Some of you may have seen, Doug put together for us a press release last week on the FCC map that maps broadband coverage. And that got some really nice feedback. Really, it was picked up by a number of local and regional news, both television and written media places. And I've gotten a number of telephone calls from people. In fact, kind of the most, not humorous, because it's like sadly humorous, but it was a gentleman called me who said that he was calling me to give his feedback because his internet coverage was so poor that he couldn't answer the survey online. So, so I helped with that. Continuing to put together a monthly county manager video for social media about upcoming county board meetings. Our first one of those in November was very well received or very well viewed. Looking at creating a outline for 2023 on short areas of focus kind of for each meeting, largely around finances. So you don't get the fire hose presentation of financial information in a few compact months, but really looking at giving you a lot of groundwork around information around capital improvement planning and debt and investments and all of those sorts of things. I've mentioned it in a previous meeting, but the investment committee is comprised of Sophia Jevney as the treasurer, Beata as the CFO, and myself. And we're already making money for the county. No, we actually investments for the longest time, it didn't make any difference. You know, if you were going to get a 0.001% on your investments or a 0.0015%, you know, but Sophia took the effort and moved some CDs from about a quarter or 0.5% interest to 4.5 and 4.75 on really short-term investments under a year and under investments. So creates an automatic, believe it was about $40,000 without doing anything except moving the money around. Looking at giving you a kind of a calendar, hope to have that for you for February of kind of what you can expect each month. And then continuing to encourage department heads to promote positive contribution by staff for their great service through social media, really having them take a role in developing content regarding their staff, whether it's short video highlights or little information releases. But the county does a lot of really good work and really touches all of our lives every single day. If you drove here this morning, the highway department helped to get you here. If you got married or purchased property or any of those other things that happen, had a death in your family, all those things went through our Register of Deeds office. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And so I just think that with the kind of kick in the shorts that public service has taken over the last decade, anything we can do to promote a positive message about the really great work that happens is important. So I wanted to offer that to you, give you an opportunity to tell me that's not where you'd like my focus to be, or there are other things. There obviously are other things that happen on a daily basis and other areas of priority, but these are kind of the, if one would say, sort of the pillars or the foundational pieces of what I'm working on.
Thank you, County Manager Corpola. Next order of business, reports, resolutions, and ordinances to the county board from the executive committee. None. Number 7, review reports, resolutions, and ordinances coming to the county board from the standing committees. A, Committee on Administration Resolution amending the inventory of job classifications. Does anyone, supervisor, want to speak to that? Supervisor Headland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, if you notice that we are going to change the title of one of our positions in the highway department to create an assistant highway commissioner as opposed to a engineer. And this has been a request from the highway department and the highway department committee to change this, feeling it's more appropriate for that position. And so it was voted on by the my committee, Department Administration Committee, to pass it on and let you know that we approved to pass this on to the board as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Headland. Do we have to do anything with that or just pass it on?
You do not. These are just
Yep.
notices of things that are coming forward.
7B, Planning Resources and Development. B1, Proposed Taylor Lake Rehabilitation District Order. Does somebody want to speak to that? Supervisor Quinn?
Yeah, you all, I think, saw the draft order in your packets. I want to thank our staff, multiple people in the ENS department who worked on that 5 or 6 page legal description that was in there, and other details. It was a lot of detail work, but much appreciated. So the process, of course, was that we accepted the petition from the applicants back in last summer and started a process where the board remitted it to the PR&D committee to hold a public hearing, which we did, and to do basically do a report on the request and determine whether it met the standards that the state has set for statutes of step. We did that, and I think we told the board last meeting that was or maybe it was November, can't remember now, but that was completed and that we would be prepared to bring a formal order back to the board this month for consideration. And that order will, if it's passed by the board, it will trigger a process of, I think approximately 3 months, where the 30-day period where citizens or anyone that really can, I think citizens in the area can raise legal objections to the process if they want to. Also a 3-month period in which an interim board will meet and sort of set the ground rules for how the district will have its first annual meeting. And at that annual meeting, the board will elect, or the citizens will elect a set of electors on their own. We as Dunn County have the ability to select one representative to serve on the board on behalf of Dunn County, and we are making a recommendation for that too. So what we did is, to try and be fair, is we sent out a notice through various means, including social media, to people who were interested in being on the board to fill out a short application. And 10 people did respond to that. All of them really excellent candidates who provided really thoughtful reasons why they wanted to serve and thought they'd be good at it. Yesterday, the PR&D committee reviewed those and did a sort of a secret ballot vote to determine the three that we were going to select for the initial board. And that process, it took a couple ballots to do that. So on the form that we see next week, there will be added the names of Jerry Porter, Al Brown, and Zach Raff to be on the interim committee to sort of develop and establish a district. And then we have asked Representative Zons, who is also a Lake resident, if he would be willing to serve as the county representative to the committee, and he has agreed. And that, I think the understanding is that position would be a 2-year position, that it would be something that would be filled after the county board election every 2 years, and that would be served for 2 years. So that's where we're at. Any questions about that or discussion about that?
Could you, just because it's kind of come up that, can you kind of reacquaint us with the how this process worked and the kind of the PR&D committee's limitations based on statute as far as, decision making and that, just so that we're kind of up to date on that again?
Yeah, so the statutes require, and if Chase is back there, so he can help me if I misstate this or leave something out. The statutes require that the applicants secure at least 51% of current landowners within the designated district boundary. And so they did do that. They started the process of gathering the petitions in late May, I think, and by mid-July or early July, they had I forget how many, but 500 and some plus petitions, which amounted to 53.1% of the residents, the certified residents. Andrew, our clerk, verified that the signatures were actually of landowners and accurate. So we went through that process. So that met the first stipulation of the statutes. Then we had to hold a public hearing, which we held, I can forget the date now, but it was in July. And that public hearing kind of triggered the timeline for the board to be on. And the public hearing was pretty split between people who supported it and people who didn't. And then we went through a process of evaluating the rationale that was offered for the establishment of the district. And the state statute sets, I think, 4 criteria that have to be met. And they're things like, is it demonstrated to be needed, fill a need? Does it provide a reasonable process for the citizens to participate? I forget what the other ones were. Mike, do you remember? It was the 4 things like that kind of. They were mostly procedural, and the committee and staff did a formal report, a written report, looking at the rationale for the district provided by the applicants and measuring it against those 4 standards, and determined that they had, based on the statute, they had met those standards. So with that, we brought it back to the board, and the board, remitted it back to us to prepare the formal order for it. And that's where we're at today.
If I might, I think that it's going to be really important with the presentation of this at the board to have those 4 legal requirements
Yeah.
As part of the presentation, probably very close to either right at the beginning or very close to the vote, because that's the fact that these are the limitations and this is why we are making the decision we do is going to be really important both to the citizens and to the supervisors as they're doing the vote.
Yeah, I agree. I will do that for sure, Kelly. Thank you. Anything else? There is one other thing though that I want to bring up, and Kelly referenced it earlier. So we have at the meeting yesterday, we had some presentations from the public about the district, and we have had occasionally, and we've allowed that throughout the summer and the fall. And the question was raised, well, why isn't there public comment at this meeting? And what we pointed out was that the rules of the procedure that the board has established is that for items where there is a public hearing, where the public has a formal opportunity being sworn in to provide public testimony, we will not allow public testimony at the board meeting. The rationale being that you want to make sure that the opportunity for discussion is fair and equal, and that you're not waiting it at the last minute. It's always been kind of a bit of a struggle to sort of balance that with the clear desire to allow people to speak their mind on an important topic. And so after the meeting, there was some informal discussion, and county manager and council suggested that we could, within the rules, vote to suspend the rules for the purpose of providing an opportunity for comment on the order. As was pointed out today, that is not without its limitations, because it's not a perfect scenario, but that would be an option that we could consider. Would be at some point where it's appropriate, we would make a motion to suspend the rules and allow some some process for discussion. Now, that could be, we could say we will do 30 minutes of discussion, limited to 3 minutes a person, and we will pick from pro and con alternately. Or we could have it be more wide open than that. But that, our feeling was we wanted to ask, to bring that to this committee today and get some sense of whether that was what we're going to go. And I do appreciate the comments that Kelly made earlier. I think that those are good points, and they are problematic. So
If I might again, just for clarification's sake, this is probably best directed to Nick. My understanding is one of the reasons that we don't allow the public comment after a judicial hearing is because, after a public hearing is because with the public hearing, the committee of the board that is dealing with that, or the board as a whole, is acting in its quasi judicial function, since the
Yeah, in essence, yes. The concern that this was meant to address is that there's a public hearing scheduled and everybody has an opportunity to come in and give evidence and speak to it. And then the words they speak, the documents that they present can be considered as evidence in making a determination, making a recommendation. And if one side or the other were to recruit supporters to come in and address the board, present new information, new documents during public comment, it would give an unfair advantage to the side, whichever side it was for or against a particular decision that would have to be made. And so the purpose was really to make it equal, make it fair, so that if you want to come to the hearing, you can come to the hearing and present your evidence.
okay, so my concern,
Can't hear you.
Your wire jiggled again.
yeah, it just cut out on me.
Now it's on. Don't
My
move.
concern would be what the legal exposure is at that point with something that is quite contentious if we allow that public comment at the meeting. I'm certainly open to it and I want to hear from citizens. I just want to make very sure that we're on firm footing for that.
The only concern that I would have, and I would caution you or admonish you to be mindful of it, is that any public comment couldn't be considered as evidence in, making the determination. It's just people's thoughts about whether they're against it or for it. Nobody could really, it would be inappropriate to accept new information that makes any one of you think, oh my gosh, that's the, wrong decision, or boy, is that ever the right decision? I'm going with it. Because it's not a public hearing. You're addressing the four corners of what the Planning, Resource and Development Committee is presenting to you after they've done all that. They've done the public hearing, they've heard the people, they've examined the documents, they've verified all of the information about who received notice and, worked with the legal description and all of that. So then they distill it into their resolution or the order and present it to the county board. And there are certain aspects of it that could be amended, but it's, you have to be, the county board has to be, each member of the county board has to make their own decision based on the information that's available as prior to the public comment as to whether or not the conditions, the four statutory conditions have been met.
Chairman McCullough, this is Gary Steen here. If I might share my my outlook on this, because we're in essence approving the creation of another taxing district, I feel that the public should have an opportunity to talk on this versus our other type of committee meetings. And this board rule, if I'm understanding it correctly, was essentially put in there for the zoning situation because we have 50, 60, 70 of those a year. And that was put in there to handle those situations. But I think this situation personally, and I'm just talking personally, is that we're asking we are giving the okay for another taxing situation. I think that we should, something of that magnitude, I think it would be okay for public comment. That's
Yeah,
my,
I'm not at all opposed to public comment. And I think that you are correct that this is has enough weight to it that we should err on the side of public comment. But we should probably include, as along with, assuming we suspend the rules, I would think that we would want Nick to address the supervisors with the admonishment he just listed, because that's going to be important in terms of making sure that everybody who is voting on this understands the legal ramifications as well.
Chairman, in absence, McCullough, I have a question for Nick, and I just want to make sure I understand this now. The requirements that are set out by statute were met. They had to have a certain percentage which was met. So everything they've done is correct and meets or fulfills the letter of the law. Is that correct?
Each of you has to make that decision as you cast your vote.
Well, let me finish then, okay?
Yeah, okay.
If, so why would we deny it? If 53% of the people in the involved taxation area approve it and went to through the mechanics of getting everything approved. So I just want to understand that, let's say, if it's not approved, why would it not be approved?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I can tell you that in my opinion, the statutory prerequisites are met.
And so, to feather out what I'm thinking here, then, if the board for some reason would not approve it, I feel we would be opening ourselves up to some legal jeopardy because the requirements to form a lake district were all met. 53% or whatever it was of the people said they wanted to do that. And our job is to approve or disapprove it. I would be hard pressed to explain why I disapproved it. Being that everything was met and the percentages were met and they had ample time to, and I'm not saying this would make the people that are against it happy, but they have ample time to do whatever they got to do. And going on from this point, let's say it was approved, they have was it a 30-day period to bring litigation or whatever they feel they should do. Am I making sense of what I'm saying here?
Yeah, I can give you my thoughts about it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I voted for it because I think that they met the criteria. But I could see how someone could argue that, you know, they don't really have a plan for improving the lake. What they've talked about is not going to address the problem at the lake. Someone could say, you know, the petition gathering was misleading and people didn't have enough time to really consider what they were being told. Those are the kinds of things that could come up. Now, whether, you know, that would change people's minds or make people vote, or whether that's those are the kind, that's the kind of thing that might, because it is sort of, in the end, it still is kind of a subjective decision as to whether or not it meets the criteria or not. Mike, you have some thoughts?
Well, one of the criteria I think was, is it necessary? Is that?
Yeah. Mhm.
Correct. Yep. Chase, give me the thumbs up. So is it necessary? And we thought it was, but maybe you won't. Maybe someone else won't think, was it necessary to have this because there's no plan, as Tom said, playing the devil's advocate as he can do.
There's
well.
no way to clean it up. It's a bigger problem than we can handle it on the lake here. There are lots of reasons why people could say it's not going to work. So it was our recommendation as a committee that they, based on our report from staff and the research we had done in the hearing, that they had met those conditions, but I could see that supervisors may not agree with that.
I appreciate the time and effort that went into this. Appreciate your talking. Is there any other discussion related to this topic? Yes, Supervisor Roger.
So I guess on the topic of public comment, I just have a little bit of I don't know, maybe it's one of my things I get on a soapbox about, but you're requesting that, to answer your question, you were requesting supervisors to vote with their best judgment one way or another at the county board meeting. One complaint I would say, and this isn't necessarily specific to just this issue, but supervisors that are not on that committee are not allowed to attend that committee and speak and ask questions. So they can't interact with that evidence that's brought forward and have a opportunity to present their opinion. They can behind the scenes talk to individual committee members. So when you prevent public comment at the Board of Supervisors, it to me conflicts slightly with our job to be able to make intelligent decisions, since we don't always have all of the information and we can't hear public comment. I understand as supervisors, we're allowed to go to that committee meeting and listen, but that is different than participating. So that, as far as the public comments in this situation, I don't know that I would have a strong viewpoint one way or another, but I think maybe this is an example of something we should address in the future as far as public comments and supervisors' role at committee meetings.
Thank you, Supervisor Rogers. Is there any other comments here? Supervisor Calabrese?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. Yeah, I'm not the corporation counsel, and I don't know the letter of the law of the state statute, but it does. I know that a couple people have brought up the possibility of litigation if we don't, if the criteria are met and then we don't pass it. I don't know how that can be possible if the criteria are subjective. Is it beneficial to the lake? But I don't know. But I also would think that in that same topic, that same vein, there could be board members who hear from the public in a public comment section on Wednesday. And it might be the first time they're hearing somebody say, we were misled when the signature gathering happened. And that might really alter someone's opinion and maybe think we would be leaving ourselves up for, to potential litigation if we did approve it, if the signatures weren't gathered properly. And of course, we need the evidence and everything like that. But although a lot of work has been done and the information is available, if you reach out to the PRND, I think we should suspend the rules and allow public comment so that everybody can make their own decision. And even if I'm sorry, even if that public comment does change their mind. I know that at the beginning we talked about like if the supervisors should come in knowing that the requirements were met and they should vote on that, but it's impossible to not hear the public comment if they speak and not have it affect you.
Thank you Supervisor Calabrese. Supervisor Zons.
Let him go first.
Oh, Corp Counsel Lang.
Well, I was gonna give a uncustomarily short parliamentary reminder. I really think this is a great exercise for you to kind of talk through this. But a motion to suspend a rule does not require pre-approval by anyone. So as part of your work on the floor in this room next week, if any of you or any other members feel compelled to make that motion, you may. It requires a second. And it's subject to debate and it requires a 2/3 vote, but it's part of parliamentary procedure.
Thank you, Corp Counsel. Supervisor Zahn.
The only thing I just wanted to add, because I just want to acknowledge that the constituents who have reached out to me who have had a little buyer's remorse on petition signing, who acknowledged the same thing that Supervisor Calabrese said about they felt they were misled, and is there any way that they can take their signature back? And I said, really, there is no way to, once a petition has been signed, even if they were misled, and it's unfortunate. But I just wanted to at least acknowledge that in this meeting that I heard that. And I did suggest to them that, if this goes ahead and goes through and they aren't happy, I mean, this is not it's not the district is going to have elections, and the initial board will be, well, they were kind of elected in the committee itself, and then there will be public elections. And they have every opportunity at that point, if this does go through, to get involved, and they can vote to disband the Lake District as soon as it has its first meeting, if enough people feel that way. So there is an opportunity to, if it's created and enough people feel that they were misled about signing petitions or getting involved, or that they didn't know it was going to be a taxing authority, or they didn't know that there's going to be talk of dredging, or whatever the thing that they're not happy about, those decisions, can be voted on. The people who are their representatives on the board can be voted on, and it can be voted on to disband the district at an upcoming meeting as well. So there are some remedies for people that feel like they were misled with the petition signing as well. So just wanted to get that out there too.
Thank you, Supervisor Zahn. We're going to take a 5-minute recess now. Supervisor McCullough.
Just one thing I want to address from Supervisor Rogers' comments. Well, members cannot vote on committees that are not theirs. In general, most committee chairs are certainly willing to allow other supervisors to ask questions and to speak. And that's again one of those places where discretion of the chair of the committee or vote to suspend the rules to allow another supervisor to be there, and speak. So there are procedures which would address Mike's concern about not being able to be in the room and ask questions.
Thank you, Supervisor McCullough. We will now take a 5-minute recess. Nature call. Explanation on the proposed Taylor Lake Rehabilitation District order.
Mike?
Okay, hearing no other comment, we will move on to 7.
Question, a procedural question.
Yeah.
In making that kind of a motion, if someone chooses to do it, could they suggest are there restrictions on how that's applied? Like a process, for example, or time limit, or
You could include that. I mean, I think if a motion to suspend the rule, like at the beginning of public comment came and it was seconded and passed, I think the chair could set
Yep.
parameters for the public comment.
Okay.
Like I see we have 475 people here. I'm going to limit your comments to 4 minutes or raise your hand if you're for and raise your hand if you're against. Well, there's only 3 people for and 20 people against. Maybe it'd be more fair to balance it out or alternate as you had suggested, and then.
And,
cut it
you
off.
know, it's also like typically when we have had contentious decisions things that haven't gone through a public hearing, but have been very contentious and had huge crowds in the back of the room, like you said. But in those cases, usually we've had people sign in and asking to, we're not going to be doing that this time. So we probably need to think, maybe the chair needs to think a little bit about how to manage that. And maybe what you're saying is one suggestion, just sort of read the crowd and then say, look, I think we can take up to 20 minutes from this side and 20 minutes from that side, and we'll start. I don't know.
I think that's reasonable. And I think it'd be good to have the clerk maybe take, name and address information as each person speaks and just make note of it.
Good question, Tom. The chair will have it in order when we get there.
No doubt.
All right.
Excuse me,
Chris,
Chair,
yeah.
can I just add one piece?
Yeah.
So I just want you to weigh in on this. So we have a press release ready to go out tomorrow. That's changed 4 times based on these conversations. Just because anticipating that it was going to be a topic of interest for the meeting, we wanted to provide people with the background around what were the 4 decision-making points. So kind of the back and the forth between you could comment or you couldn't comment. I think we can adjust language to say there's a potential for comment if a motion's made to that effect. Are you in support of sending out that type of a press release to preempt kind of people having awareness that there might be an opportunity for them?
Yes, I'm in favor of that, and it should stress that the opportunity may be presented to address the board. And because we can't guarantee that's going to go through, but at least that would, because that's our intent. Now that we don't know whether if we were going to suspend the rules, we don't know if it's going to pass or not. I mean, so you can't tell them that for sure, but I think, yes, I think that's reasonable. Okay. An easier one, thank God. 7B. Yeah, thank you a lot, Kelly. I want to thank you.
Oh, I was gonna wait for this, but I wanted to thank Vice Chair Steen for running this meeting and the county board meeting with me kind of looking over his shoulder from a distance. I really appreciate that.
I doubt if anybody's got a gun that'll shoot 2,500 miles, but you're all right, I guess. 7B2, ordinance approving a zoning map amendment, Nigaman. Speaking to this,
I'd just say this is a pretty standard request and.
slam dunk.
Yeah, slam dunk.
Okay, thanks.
That's one way of putting it. Yeah.
All right.
Layup.
Yeah, layup.
Another.
And Vice Chair Steen, can I just offer that you'll note on the county board agenda that there's 2, because one of them already came to the committee, executive committee last month when there was no meeting for the county board.
Right, that would be Chef Check's one, right?
Yep.
I think, yeah. All right.
I saw that,
Right,
Tim.
yeah. Thank you. Moving on then, 7C Legislative Committee. Resolution revising 2023 legislative agenda, volunteer drivers. And is everybody aware of what that pertains to? Our volunteer drivers were being treated as Lyft or Uber drivers and impacting their tax situation. And so we wanted to clarify that. And the state is also working on this because it's a relatively new problem, Uber and Lyft, that we didn't have before. But not that it's a problem, but treating our volunteer drivers that way. Do we need to move on this as a resolution? All right. 7C2 resolution revising the 2023 legislative agenda, technical college funding. We went through that. Any questions, comments? Tom, yes? I
Yeah,
mean
so-
Supervisor Quinn?
No, I'm glad we're doing this. I am, I'd like to have some discussion.
You can just do it here. You don't have to call us. I mean.
I'm wondering, so this is for our legislative agenda. The more I thought about it, I'm wondering whether we should also consider this to be a resolution that we would carry forward to the WCA for inclusion at the annual meeting. And because it seems like it would be, it's really an important issue. And I want to bring that up now. So I think that they have to, there's a certain timeline that has to go in. And so if the legislative committee keep that in mind, so we have a chance to consider that prior to that.
I think it's a good idea, Supervisor Quinn, and we'll do that. And we'll research that and then we'll include it in the board actions.
Right. And that could also give us a chance to develop a fact sheet about it.
Yeah.
That we could distribute to the WCA and all the people at the convention and sort of get this idea seeded a little bit, which we told Terry we would do.
Makes sense. Thank you. Next order of business is 7C3 resolution revising 2023 legislative agenda, local highway funding programs, and we already went over that earlier. I think all questions were answered. Even Supervisor Rogers answered, questions were answered over there. So I think we're good. Next is a report from standing committees. And I'll start with the man in the spotlight, Supervisor
Oh.
Quinn.
I don't have much more to, we've been busy and not super busy, but we've had the few zoning things to take up and the Lake District discussion seems to take up a fair amount of our time. Other than that, kind of normal activity.
Thank you, Supervisor Rogers.
Facilities hasn't had a meeting since our last report back last month. We will be meeting tonight.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor Headland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Committee on Administration did meet on December 15th here at the Government Center in this room. We had a presentation from Mr. Jim Tripp, whom most of you know. He is our CDBG representative. And so he gave us an update on the fund and what is going on with that. And basically it's being operated for us as a group of counties have chosen to have Chippewa County's office really administer the whole thing in reference to those funds. There are no new funds for Dunn County. There are some new funds that do go to the group of counties right now. Along with that, we heard from all our staff reports that we get monthly written reports from, including information about their budgets. We reviewed the vouchers and approved those. We had a recommendation for transit and facilities, lease staff transition. And if you remember, those people are now all going to be county employees. And so we had to agree to just how we were going to transition them in terms of pay and vacation time and so forth. And that was all prepared for us by our HR department. And we all agreed to that. We were notified that they're going to continue the audit class pay for Chris Anderson at NDC. We're still filling another role than his normal position out there. Along with that, we did approve, as I mentioned before, the classification change to an assistant highway commissioner instead of highway engineer. And that came to us from highway and through us, and we, like I said before, we approved to send that on to the county board. Next meeting of the committee on administration will be held here 3 o'clock, January 26th. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Headland, and thank you for bringing the facility people back into the fold. Supervisor Calabrese.
Thank you. The Judiciary and Law Committee does not usually meet in December, but we did last year because the sheriff needed the approval from the committee. He was to get rid of or to find a new eligibility recruitment list for deputies because he had exhausted the entirety of the last one, and the committee did approve that. And we were supposed to start at 4 o'clock. I don't know how much you really want to know about what happened, but there was, we had trouble getting a quorum, and we didn't start until 4:37 when Carl Vandermeulen came through in the clutch via Zoom. And I mean, notice went out for the meeting in due time, but it was December 19th, right around the holidays. So, but we had 3 supervisors there. So we got started late, but it's okay. And one notable thing, Melissa Gilgenbach from Emergency Management talked about the storm in the middle of December, if you remember, right around then, and all the power outages, and that the county was close to declaring an emergency, but there was no funding available. And she said that Dunn County did not qualify for disaster relief, even though you remember that storm and the winds, and because apparently state statute says that if it's a winter storm and you do not break a snowfall record, then you don't qualify for disaster relief. And the snowfall record is 21 inches in 1906. And so I don't know, maybe that can go on a legislative agenda at some point in the future. And the next meeting is January 23rd at 4 p.m. right here.
Thank you, Supervisor Calabrese. Supervisor Zans.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. We met yesterday, actually, with the Community Resources and Tourism Committee. Got an update from Kristen Bruder, the Area Extension Director. They have a new strategic, I guess, query that they're doing. So she actually posed a bunch of questions to the committee members about how extension kind of works with the county and some of the benefits and some of that stuff. I'll kind of pass it on here that she does encourage that county supervisors and even county department heads reach out to her if there are things that they feel that extension can do to address issues or things in Dunn County. We also were introduced to the new 4-H director. He's actually a former teacher from Downsville and cut his teeth in 4-H as a youngster. So he's 6 days into the job. Actually, it'd be 7 days today then. And got to meet him. Addison Vang, former county employee here, is the community development educator now with Extension, and kind of gave an update on some of the grants and programs that that he's kind of overseeing. Also had a fairly long discussion about broadband and mentioned a resource with Extension who's done kind of extensive work on helping communities and counties develop kind of like subcommittees or independent commissions dealing with broadband and bringing in a lot of like players in the municipality or county that aren't, you know, just government employees or whatever. So stakeholders like ISPs and stuff like that, and really kind of some encouraging stuff. So we're going to see if that individual can address our next meeting in February or an upcoming meeting to kind of see whether we could do something similar to that in Dunn County. And let's see what else. Oh, and our county manager gave an update that you already heard kind of about some of the communication stuff that she's been working on, and was really, again, I'll kind of echo what she said about the initial press release about using the FCC broadband map, got a lot of play and had a lot of people commenting on it. And I shared it in social media and got a lot of comments on it as well. So that was good to see. And our next meeting, really happy to say, will be on Valentine's Day. So we're going to have a meeting of the Community and Resources and Tourism Committee for a special Valentine's Day meeting next month. That's my report.
Thank you, you romantic devil. You. Supervisor Kinnear.
Now that's hard to follow. Okay, the neighbors report, you might notice something's similar all the way through here. We're still waiting on the Medicaid increase to kick in, and when it does, it'll be backdated to July. We did get some for Central, but not for the other two buildings. We're still waiting on the state supplemental payments on what we're gonna get, and we've gotten some, but it doesn't look like it's correct. We're still waiting on the state to see if our facilities are okay for a CNA course. And we have an active posting for the clinical mentor. So we're waiting to fill that position. And that's basically the chief nurse for out there, or head nurse. Let's see, Jane Hansen and Carmen have been working together to try and get a better way to present the financials to the committee, one that's not so much work for Jane and one we can understand. Right now, she has to take everything from SAP by hand and put it into a spreadsheet. And SAP, have you heard of that before? COVID, hey, we got a lull right now. It's looking really good. No positive residents right now. I think there's only one staff that had it, and no flu for the residents so far. So that's looking good. And we got 97 residents, which was pretty much what we've been having. And 2 households are still closed in Central. The other 2 buildings are pretty full. And finally, now put this on your calendars. They've been having fundraisers for the bus for quite some time now. And the bus is like $80,000 or
$98,000 and $100,000, and so far we've raised $57,000.
which I find amazing that they raised that much. But if you go to Culver's on February 7th for dinner, 10% of that goes towards the bus. So think about that. If you're out and about, hit that. And we meet again next week. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Kinnear. Supervisor Morehouse.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. You perhaps will recall that the Health and Human Services Board did not meet on November 24th, it being Thanksgiving. And I made the decision with a tiny little bit of pressure from staff to cancel our December 22nd meeting. It was another one of those predicted horrible ice storms, and in deference to our senior staff who have to drive, and our timelines for canceling, we went ahead to cancel. I think admin met that day, so it turns out that I had wimped out, but we did not meet. The staff and I will confer as normally next week about our agenda for our next meeting, which will not be canceled and will be on January 26th. That's my report.
Thank you, Supervisor Morehouse. Supervisor Johnson.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Highway Committee met this morning. Commissioner Bender reported the crews have been very busy in December. They've been clearing the roadways for 26 days of the 31. They have also been cutting brush, hauling brine to outlying shops, and filling potholes. The interview process has started for the Assistant Highway Commissioner, and he's hoping to have that filled by early February. The County Road B project will be delayed until 2024 to allow the railroad and the DOT to coordinate the rail crossing upgrades with the county project. Both County B projects have tied traffic control plans with bi-directional configurations, so requiring both projects to take place at the same time to minimize traffic impacts and costs. That's all I have, and our next meeting is February 8th.
Thank you Supervisor Johnson. This question perhaps Dustin could answer. Does this delay impact our money from the government, state and federal?
I can answer that, Gary.
Okay,
The WSDOT approved the change management request to extend the STP urban project on County B from US 1229 to I-94 to a 2026 sunset date. So we're okay there. Dustin got that taken care of.
thank you both very much. That concludes our reports from the standing committee. The next order of business is the next meeting date is February 8th, 2023, which will also be the same date as the legislative meeting.
Legislative
excuse me.
committee,
No legislative meeting.
right?
Oh, legislative committee.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was wrong, but
I'm
then
sorry.
but then I was right.
The legislative agenda presentation is the 6th.
Yeah.
And then the legislative meeting, the 8th.
Thank you. For a while, I thought I was home there, but thank you. That concludes our business, I think. And I'd like to thank everybody. Please be careful going home. Like to wish Brian well with his wife's return home, and we'll try to keep crash and burn Morehouse in one piece up there. Take care of yourself, please. Everybody have a safe trip home. Thank you for coming. We are adjourned.
Have a good night.
Oh, yeah.